Welcome to Think for Yourself Clubhouse. My name is Bill Martin. We are interviewing Marilyn Zayas today. My co-host is Dennis Reinhart as usual. Good afternoon, Dennis. Marilyn Zayas is an appellate judge, so I'll be calling her Judge Zayas. She's been a Court of Appeals judge for 10 years. Some of her background, she was born in East Harlem, New York. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Her parents were immigrants from Puerto Rico, and I hope she addresses that in a few moments. She attended Brooklyn Technical High School, which was one of those magnet schools. You have to be good to get in.
It's one of the top 50, or top 100 public high schools out of 24,000 public high schools.
Yeah.
So there's some numbers for you.
Studied computer science at City College of New York. Took a job at Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati.
Correct.
So you were an executive at Procter & Gamble. And you went to law school at University of Cincinnati.
Correct.
Along that same period. And became a lawyer, practiced law, became a judge. And here you are running for Ohio Supreme Court. And first of all, voters in rural Ohio see a name that says Z-A-Y-A-S. How would you pronounce that?
So I'll give you the visual. Think of your eyes and think of us, Zayas. But I'll also give you an alternative and make it really ezy. A lot of people call me Judge Z.
Judge Z.
So you can, you can call me Judge Z,
Right.
and we're done.
Judge Z. I understand, Judge, that when you're running for Ohio Supreme Court, there are lots of things you just can't say. You can't say how you're going to decide a case.
Correct.
You can't commit yourself in public to how you view a particular subject. But there are some things that you can talk about. We went over those in our prep a few minutes ago. So if I slip and ask a question the wrong way, just correct the question.
That's okay.
And go on and say what you need to say.
That's okay. I mean, the one thing that I can't say honestly is that I love Ohio. You know, because when you're reading your resume, it makes me, it can sound like, she's from the city. She only understands the city, right? The minute I saw Ohio, I fell in love with it. And my mother comes from, my mother's whole lineage is farmers. And what holds us together, the commonality, is the values. We have the same values: hard work, education, integrity. And that's what this campaign is about. This campaign is about those values that I believe make Ohio special, that brought me to Ohio. When I came here because I wanted something different. I didn't want more of the same. And that's why I'm running for the Supreme Court, because I'm seeing us going down a path that's very divisive, and this is not the Ohio that I fell in love with. And I'm seeing these issues that are so pressing in this state. We're number 9 out of 50 states in drug overdoses in the state of Ohio. We're in the lowest tier for access to healthcare and quality of healthcare and education. And it's time that we get to addressing that. And I want us to talk about how the Supreme Court can address that, because there are things that are under the direct authority of the Supreme Court that go straight into these issues.
I want to talk a little bit about one of the issues that involves the Supreme Court very intimately, and that's gerrymandering.
Absolutely.
Are you able to describe for us, I know you are, can you describe for us how gerrymandering works, how that controversy works, and how it involves the House Supreme Court?
Absolutely.
And perhaps what you can help do on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Some people say that voting is the most fundamental rights, and that's because voting sits on all of your other rights. It enables all of your other rights. So when you gerrymander, when you have unfairly, drawn maps.
Gerrymandering basically means the drawing of the boundaries of districts.
Correct.
So that you favor one party or the other.
Correct.
Or one race over another.
Correct.
Something like that.
As opposed to natural lines or things that make sense. When it comes to the state congressional maps, who's going to represent you in Columbus? Who's going to pass those laws? Who's going to pass the laws to address the issues that need to be addressed? When those maps come out of the commission and they're challenged, there's only one court in our state that reviews them. Solely one court. It bypasses the trial courts. It bypasses me and the Court of Appeals. It goes straight to the Supreme Court for review. So the Supreme Court has the ultimate authority to say whether that is in conformity with what the voters decided when we wanted everybody's vote to matter which basically means that we want every Ohioan to matter, because your vote is your voice. So if you take away somebody's voice, and it doesn't matter how you feel, this isn't an R or a D, because if you're on the D side, you shouldn't be taking away the R vote, and if you're on the R side, you shouldn't be, because we're all Ohioans.
Well, historically, there's always been gerrymandering. The Democrats gerrymander when they're in, Republicans gerrymander when they're in.
Exactly, and that's why the voters spoke. That's what the voters wanted to get away. They wanted to take it away, that it didn't matter who had the majority, that it was going to be fair maps.
So they tried to get standards in the constitutional amendment that say that this will make a fair deal for everybody.
Exactly.
And it just didn't work out that way.
And it didn't work out. And the reason it didn't work out is because this is Judge Zayas' opinion, or Judge Z. My opinion is that while the language was great, the review of going straight to the Supreme Court, that's what we voted on. That's in our state constitution. We didn't fathom that folks would not behave in good faith, that they wouldn't take on that responsibility.
They would not
in good
pay
faith.
attention to the language.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the language of what the maps were intended to be, but what happens when they're not what they're intended to be. And because courts, we do have 3 co-equal branches of the government, a court does not have the authority, and should not have the authority, to tell the legislature or the executive or the commission in this case, this is exactly how you are to draw the maps. These are how they are to be. So while there was a competition, and I think there was a 3rd or 5th grader who won it, and there was a fair, balanced map that was drawn by a elementary school student, the Supreme Court couldn't say we're going to adopt that child's map that already has been deemed to be in conformity with the constitutional amendment. They could say this is not in conformity, but they can't tell another branch of the government exactly what to do. So that's the frustration for the voters, because we spoke. We decided this. So we're thinking, well, we decided this. Why are we, how did we get into this pickle? And it's about, as an elected official, we have responsibilities. My responsibility is to be guided by the law, the Constitution, and the facts in the case, right?
Right.
And the legislature's responsibility is to pass laws that are going to be good for Ohio, that are not getting into all of this nonsense while we're number 9 in drug overdoses, right? The commission's responsibility was to adhere to the voice of the people when it came to those maps.
Judge, I'm going to ask you whether you're just whistling into the wind here. If you win a seat on the House Supreme Court, there aren't going to be very many other judges who believe as you do, and you're likely to be in the minority. Is that something that you can deal with?
Well, I'm going, if you don't mind, with all due respect, I'm going to amend what you said, because it isn't about having people but believe in what I do, in the sense of what I believe in, because it's not that I have an agenda that is issue-based, and I'm going to align myself with people that have the same issue-based agenda. Okay?
Line up with the law and the statute.
Yes. So the key thing is to line up with the law, right?
All right.
So it's like with the maps. The next time that we draw these state maps and they get challenged, they're going straight to the Supreme Court. You want people there that are going to do one of 2 things. Best case scenario, if they don't adhere to the constitutional amendment, that they say it doesn't adhere. Whether it's popular or not with the party that endorsed you, I'm not here to serve a party. I'm here to serve people. So let's say that the party that endorsed me has the majority and they gerrymander it. I'm going to say that it's gerrymandered. So you want those. Now, if you can't have at least 4 on the court that are willing to do that, then you need to have people there that are going to give accountability. So when you're in the minority, what that means is you want someone who's going to write separately and going to explain why that isn't proper. And if you have 7 people that are saying, yeah, that's good enough, and a 5th grader can tell you, no, it's not, because they're drawing a map that actually looks like something that we can make, that makes sense, you need somebody on there, at least one person, who's going to speak up for the rest of us.
The great dissenter.
Absolutely. The great dissenter is accountability. That's what, so this is about, for me, this race is about accountability. It's about accountability, and it's also about collaboration, and we can talk about that.
So you have a role no matter what.
Absolutely. You have a role no matter what.
All right.
Yes.
That's what that's
That
what
is
we're doing.
absolutely right. You have a voice, you have a role no matter what. And it's a valuable role. Whether you're in the minority of the way things are being decided, it doesn't matter. You need those voices there.
Yeah. In our prep, you indicated that we may be able to talk about some of the items in your practice while you were practicing law.
Okay.
And that maybe give you an opportunity to talk about some issues. For example, did you represent women and women's rights kinds of cases in your practice?
As a practice, I represented a lot of families, and I represented a lot of children. I wouldn't say that I represented women's rights in the way that we traditionally think of them, but we certainly have had, we had a constitutional amendment that was passed in, we're in 2026 and 2023, where 57% of Ohio spoke, and they said, look, decisions, certain healthcare decisions, and also decisions on family planning and abortion, we're going to take that away from the government. We don't want the government doing that. We want families and women to make those decisions. Well, I will tell you, in my Court of Appeals, we have had a case that was challenging what that actually meant. And it had to do with the disposal of, that's a harsh way to do it, but what do you do with fetal remains when there is a natural ending of the pregnancy, okay? What do you do with that? And whether those remains would have the same sort of treatment as if it was a child who was born stillborn.
What was your analysis?
So, well, it was looking at the language of that constitutional amendment and what it was intended to apply to, and was it intended to apply to what category that it was intended to apply to.
Does it line up with the law that you had before
Exactly.
you?
So we just looked lined up with the law that we have in front of us. Absolutely.
So that's a theme that you're trying to get out
Absolutely, because that's not really that's not a blue or red theme. That's where we've gone awry of throwing these terms around and saying that it only belongs to one party. We started with the American flag. In my opinion, we started the American flag. The American flag became commandeered as if it only belonged to one party. And I've always wondered, people who are serving in our military, who are putting their lives on the line, how they felt about that. Because if you look at who serves in the military, it's every political spectrum, every racial spectrum, and guess what? Both genders too, right? So to me, I feel like it started with the flag. And then from there, it became more and more, and this whole idea of soft on crime and hard on crime. What judge is going to say, I want to open up the jails and let all the criminals out, and I want to destroy my community? Mm-hmm. That judge doesn't exist.
I think the biggest thing that we've lost is the idea that nonpartisanship should be paramount in any judicial thing. It's like people say, well, we're going to elect this judge because they're going to look out for what we want.
Exactly.
And it's got to the point where people think that's the way it's supposed to
Exactly.
be, and it's not supposed to be that way.
When people ask me on an issue, and I say to them, my job is to be a judge, is to serve everyone, to be an excellent judge, to follow the law. And they said, no, I want to know your position on fill in the blank, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what I say to them. Any judge who is going to be advocating for whatever their personal position is, they don't deserve to be a judge, and you shouldn't vote for them. And if they say to me, well, I'm not going to vote for you because you didn't answer my question, I say I'm going to respect that, but my value of maintaining the integrity of the court is more important at this moment. And I'm okay with losing that vote.
Because it's surely been eroded. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's been eroded.
And you know what makes it even worse? I'm going to tell you what happened in the last 30 days at our Ohio Supreme Court. There was a decision that came down the pike, because we started, as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't have party endorsement, never mind party designation. I shouldn't be a blue or red or D or an R. I should just be, I'm running as a Z, and you're going to decide whether you want the Z or you don't want the Z. That's how I think it should be. Well, now we put party designation on the ballot. That began in 22. Well, the Supreme Court made a decision recently that judges in Ohio can now endorse politicians and other judges.
That's really...
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the next piece that you're going to just love. One of the justices wrote separately to explain that that issue wasn't even in front of the court. So the Supreme Court decided a case, didn't ask for briefing from either side. They did it on their own without letting the two sides that had the issue, the case in front of them, weigh in on something that they were going to do spontaneously. And they spontaneously decided this. And one of the justices said, wait a second, that wasn't even in front of us. And now we're just politicians. The Supreme Court wants me to be just a politician where I can endorse politicians and judges.
Okay.
You weren't expecting that one, were you?
No, that you were involved with at one point was Immigrant and Refugee Law Center, is that correct?
Correct. So this was a few years ago. I had to step away because I'm not an advocate, and then they started to get into advocacy, so I immediately stepped away. Immigrants have always been a part of Ohio. I mean, right?
Well, I talked to one this morning who's running for Ohio Attorney General. I'm talking to another one who is running for House Supreme Court.
But
yes.
Immigrants have always been part of Ohio.
Have always been a part of Ohio.
Everywhere I go in Ohio, inevitably I meet folks that can remember their grandfather, their grandmother. They tell me stories about when their grandfather came from Germany or from Italy or from Ireland, and they're telling me about growing up and about the stories that their grandfather or the values or doing things with their grandparents. Everywhere in Ohio, you meet that person, right? Everywhere in Ohio, you meet that person.
Absolutely.
So we're only one or two generations removed from an immigrant that we can recall in our lineage as we stand here as a strong Ohio.
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's the time. In our prep, I asked you, are there some things that you really wanted to get to? And you said, this is one I really want to get to. And there's a drug problem in rural Ohio.
Absolutely.
And you think that the courts can help address that.
Absolutely.
You'd like to work on that.
Absolutely. And that's something that is under the direct authority of the Supreme Court. So we have these, I call them accountability and therapeutic dockets. Some people call them the specialized or the specialty dockets. We have a mental health docket. We have a veterans docket. We have a drug docket. We have a trafficking, human trafficking for women is a huge thing in Ohio, not a good thing, but it's a huge issue. So these are courts that are intended to take someone and get to the root of the problem so they can get back to their community in a healthy way and that there's no more criminal behavior coming out of that person. But not everyone qualifies, and it's not a free pass. It's a long process with work and accountability, that it's a partnership between that person and service providers that's going to be monitored by the court. So for veterans, we have veterans that are serving us. Now we have veterans that are serving us in Iran right now, right? They're going to come back. Some of them are going to come back with PTSD and other mental health issues as they're serving all of us. And that's not the time to turn our backs on them. It's the opposite. So if they fall astray for a bit, like if they wind up with a pill problem from pain pills, and then they wind up with a drug possession issue, we want them to have the availability of going through Veterans Court so they can address that issue and not wind up with a conviction that'll now create an issue for housing and for employment.
So what you're saying, as I understand it, is that the various local courts in Ohio have these programs. Jackson has a veterans program, I think.
They don't anymore. So Jackson used to, yes, they had one that they did all of them combined in one. They no longer have one. This area of the state, so we're number 9 out of 50 states. The highest percentage is coming out of this region. Out of the Appalachian region of Ohio is a higher drug overdose rate than where I live. And I should be super worried about that because, again, this is an Ohio issue. This isn't an issue for someone that lives in Jackson County. This is an issue for Ohio. And not having those dockets, not having that option is a problem. Now, I understand that we have small counties and maybe they're one-judge counties and it's not feasible. But I have a solution that I would love to collaborate with the Chief Justice and work towards implementing something like this. Judges are elected 6 years. All judges in Ohio Supreme Court were all elected 6 years. Well, there may not be the funding to elect a judge and to create a position for every one of these counties, but you can appoint a magistrate, go back to the Abe Lincoln days, have a traveling magistrate who holds these dockets in different counties, and they're rotating around that region of the state.
Now, the Ohio Supreme Court not only hears cases, but they have administrative functions
They
as
have
well.
administrative
And
functions.
this is kind of an administrative
Yes,
function.
and
you're
they have
talking
money
about.
functions.
Yeah.
So not only are they setting the standards for these courts, certifying the court, training the judge, but they also have a budget for this.
And they have a direct role in this.
Absolutely.
Drug court
You
business.
cannot do a drug court without the certification of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the 7 justices that have authority over that process. And so if we're going to grow it, then you need to have a majority, you need to have collaborations to say, how can we take this program that's excellent? So I'm not advocating to change the program. The program is excellent. It's proven itself to be very successful. My whole thing is we need to grow it, especially in the parts of the state that are most need. The same parts of the state that we are not listening, that we have forgotten about people. This is not a time to forget about people with these issues. It's the opposite. This is the time to stand up and to really put our arms around this.
The late Judge Mark T. Music was a leader in what you're talking about. He set up drug court in Jackson County, and unfortunately passed away recently. Dennis, are there any topics
being
you'd like to discuss?
being a retired educator, I think I can ask you this without you having to, be biased about it. Are we currently in compliance with the Ohio Constitution about our school funding? Have we been?
So that's something that already went to the Supreme Court. So just so you know, I'm a product of public education, K, all the way to law school. Education is the heart of how we prepare our youth and how we continue to be strong, right? Third-party people that have looked at that have opined that we're still not in conformity, okay? The issue that we have now is the quality and the funding.
Yes.
The funding of the public school education, because there were parts of Ohio that were collecting tax dollars. People are investing in their communities. They're paying their taxes. They're investing for that school, and a portion of that is going for the stipends. But that community does not even have an option to do the alternative.
That's the way this is.
Yes.
In our area of the state, in Jackson County, we have one.
I think there's one small school, is what I understand, right?
one private
Yes,
school.
yes.
And if you look at the other counties, with
Yes.
the exception of Scioto
Yes.
County, they are in the same
Yes.
position.
Yes.
I guess my perspective is that the last time we had an election, I believe the voters of the Jackson City School District enacted an income tax. It's an amazing thing for folks in this community to enact an income tax. They don't like taxes.
Exactly.
And
that's
I
understandable.
don't know. And what peeves me about it is they shouldn't have to. Constitution of the state of Ohio, as I understand it, says the state legislature shall provide an adequate free public education.
Yeah, because the issue
for
that
every
came to
kid.
the Supreme Court before had to do with the way that we fund it, that it comes out of taxes.
Well, the squeeze, as I understand it, is that the state legislature wants to contract the amount of money going to public education, and I believe a lot of the slack goes to voucher program. But never mind that. If they want to pay for vouchers, fine. Just keep the funding for public schools adequate, which they are not doing.
Yeah.
Not only that, they compel localities to enhance their property tax burden. What does that result in? A bunch of pissed off people getting a constitutional amendment together, and it's in play right now. Local people in the district having to enact an income tax to supplement the funds that the local school district has. So I think that's going to be an active political issue.
is
Do
gonna
you
be
think
active.
it'll be revisited at the Supreme Court?
I think that it could be revisited because it is a different flavor, first of all, of what was done before, right? And it could be, it could be challenged on the law as written. It could be challenged constitutionally, right? Because it's already been deemed that the right to education, by the way, it's a constitutional right. That's why we educate all children that are here in the United States, regardless of whatever their lineage is, because it's a constitutional right. So it could be challenged on the federal constitution. It perhaps could be challenged on the state constitution. So one thing that folks kind of forget about is that the federal constitution, that's like your basic rights. That's like the floor. The state constitution is intended to give you more rights, not equal or less. We have very little case law, very little challenge to guide us to understand how the state constitution applies. Because what's happened when it goes to court is that the argument is made based on what's been developed for the federal constitution, as if that's exactly what should apply to the state constitution. So there's a whole new world out there for attorneys to be able to come in and say, this is what this provision means, and there's nothing to say that they're wrong, because there's such little case law out there.
Yeah.
You know, in most cases there's going to be nothing. In many cases there's going to be nothing to say that they're wrong. But what they, you know, what an attorney can say is the reason that this is how it should be read is because our state constitution, our forefathers for the state of Ohio, which by the way came after the federal forefathers, they had the wisdom of time and forethought, and the state constitutions are always intended to give more rights. And this is why this, even though the federal case law might not favor us, but this is at the state what the state constitution is giving us.
Gerrymandering example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the
Constitutional Amendment.
not the
Ohio
state,
Constitution.
but you also have the original Constitution as it would before you get into the amendments. So there's language in there that is similar, but not really, to the federal Constitution. And even if the language, let's say that the language was exactly the same, again, the federal is the foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when our forefathers passed the original Constitution, that they intended to be read exactly the same as the federal Constitution. Logic tells you no, because then they wouldn't have written the state constitution.
One of the things.
Viewers, you're getting some constitutional law here. You ought to be appreciative.
Well,
I'm enjoying this.
something very simple is that people do not understand the difference between a state constitution and the federal constitution.
Right.
And back when we were trying to get the initiative on the ballot for fair districts, one of the arguments was there are already too many amendments on the state constitution.
Right, and they're talking about the amendments, not even the original Constitution.
Right, and that, the intention of the Ohio Constitution is to give people an opportunity to make changes in
Right.
the state.
Right.
It's more of a living document than the federal Constitution
It is.
Yes.
Which is really interesting because keep in mind that the U.S. Supreme Court, right? When they decided under Dobbs that we want the state to have that power. So you have already the U.S. Supreme Court saying the state has this power so that they can give more, or they can decide for their people, for their state, what makes sense, and that's separate and apart to what our forefathers were intending to do with the federal Constitution. So to be against it, the amendments as a whole, to say there should never be any amendments, or there should, then that's opposite to, even in some ways, to what the federal courts have said.
I think we could go probably for a while on this topic.
Oh yeah, I can go on and on about it.
So, people are starting to come in for the meet and greet, so we better try to shut it down.
The one thing we didn't talk about that I'm gonna squeeze in real quick is the data centers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna leave you with this. An unknown fact: any challenges to utility, like to your utility bills, that challenge bypasses my court, bypasses the trial courts, the Court of Appeals, and goes straight to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, they're the only ones that decide it, and they must decide it. They don't get to choose. It's not discretionary jurisdiction. So when the determinations come down the pike on challenges as to who's going to be paying for that cost for building the power grid, those challenges are going to go straight to the Supreme Court to be determined.
we know some people that would like to talk to you.
Thank you for the time today. This has been- I just had a good kick out of it. Very spirited discussion. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. I think we'll set it off there. Have a good day.